Hi, welcome to the Parenting Bridge podcast. I'm Dr. Michelle Alden, a licensed professional counselor, parent coach, and family therapist, and I'm here to help you to build a bridge to your best family possible. So you have to really realize that, instead of demanding, you are able to respond and model the way that you want to be treated and help your kids to learn those boundaries. So it's perfectly okay to be able to say, I am not able to talk to you right now when you're talking to me in this way. So I'm going to walk away and give you a few minutes to calm down, and then we'll try again. Or you can even say, I'm really having a hard time with the way that you're talking to me right now, and I need a few minutes before I can continue this conversation. And then you're being respectful. You're telling them what your intent is, and you're acknowledging that it is about you, but also that you want to hear what they have to say, but you can't hear it in this way. So it gives that space, and it's about the relationship. Remember that part of being controlling is that it's all about you. It's all about how it makes you feel, and that becomes more important than anything else that we're trying to do. People that are in control can take responsibility for themselves, so they can realize that they made a mistake. So even if you yelled at your kids or you lost it, you can come back around and say, you know what, like, it doesn't matter what you did. I still need to be in control, and I'm sorry for the way that I acted. And we need to work on this, and so I don't want you to go overboard in the shame and the guilt of and beat yourself up as a person, because I don't want to model that either. Because I work with a lot of kids, and you have these kids that when you do point out a mistake or they make a mistake, they go into a place of like that they can't be taken out of either, where it's like, well, I'm just stupid, or I always mess up, or it's like this total failure thing. And so you've got to also model like that you can own your mistake and we can move on. We're working on it. We're learning. I'm learning too, and so you're moving through it and dealing with it. So not overcompensating, right, for how bad you feel. So also people that are in control tend to not see others as being bad or wrong. You're going to feel more like you're losing control if you're telling yourself that these kids are driving you crazy. You have to see through that and be able to see the struggle, that they're having a hard time, and here's how you're going to help. Because if you start asking them like, oh, you're having a hard time, do you want me to help you? Why are you having a hard time? All these things, that we kind of start demanding from kids, like, why are you taking out on me? It's not my fault you're having a hard time. Or pointing out, like, sometimes I come into a house and that's the first thing parents are like, well, this one here is doing this and this one did this. And it's like, what is the point of that? Like, let's talk about how we're doing together and what we're going to work through. And if someone's having a hard time, we can just say, like, I think they're really having a hard time, so I'm just hanging out close to them today. It's like, you don't have to shame them or, let everybody know in the room how mad you are at that child. And I think a lot of that has to do with how we see behaviors. Like, if we really understand that children's behaviors, all of our behaviors actually have to do with the internal struggle that's going on, has very little to do with us. So that's why it's like, if you're trying to take control of it because you're trying to protect yourself, it's going to be rough, because it really doesn't have anything to do with you. It's something else going inside. And sometimes we can identify that and we can work through it. And sometimes we just have to help them. Like, I don't know what you're feeling, but we have these things we need to do and we have to move forward. So, it's helping them to identify it without shaming or making them feel bad. Like, if you're shaming your kid about that they're having a hard time because and they're having a hard time and they did this and they did that and they did that, like, that's not going to help them feel better. That's not going to help them not have a hard time. And now they have to save face, right? It's like, you already identified what they were feeling and how they were acting. And in order for them to maintain their dignity, they're going to probably keep acting that way, because now it's going to be even harder to really, come out of it, in a graceful way. It's going to take something else to get out of that. So just be careful, and how we do that. And we do it to kids way more than we would do it to somebody else. Like, we probably wouldn't, well, I don't know, maybe you might do it to a spouse. I've had some people do that before, but in general, like we wouldn't do that to other people. I wouldn't, like, this is my friend and she's really, having a hard time and she's been doing this and sometimes she doesn't call me back and she treats me like crap. And, and in fact, yesterday she said such and such and such and such, so I don't even know if she's my friend anymore. Like, that's not how I would introduce, or tell you about somebody, I would hope. Like, anyway, if it is, then we got some stuff to work on, right? So just, instead of seeing other people as bad or wrong or driving you crazy, I think it comes from a really good place if we can realize that people are doing the best they can. And that includes yourself. I know that you're doing the best that you can, but we can always get better. And so let's work on this. And how, when you see this, that we have to help people work through this in our relationships and our families, then we're coming alongside and we're helping in this way. I can tell you're having a hard time. Let me help you. Here's what we're going to do. And that is so much better than, asking or demanding an answer about why they're having a hard time, or, fine. Okay. So you're not going to even talk to me, and all this stuff that just snowballs into, it started out as one thing and now it's another thing. And by the time it explodes, it's really been a series of things. So being in control and being calm and knowing what you're going to do is so helpful. Even if you feel like you don't know what to do, you have some tools, from doing the program, or you can learn some tools by doing the program, watching some other videos, just a lot of it is just coming alongside and like, let me help you. I can see you're having a hard time, so let me help you. I'm going to, and even if they're not, like if kids are doing the right thing, you can come alongside and they can do more of the right things if you can come alongside it rather than criticizing. So it's like your kids start picking up the toys and be thankful, be like, oh, thank you for picking those up. And then you can keep the motivation by just saying, let me help. I'll grab some too, rather than, you forgot those over there. And what about that? And don't forget the fact that I told you 3 days ago that you had this toy over here and you didn't ever put it away. Remember when I told you that and you never put it away? Now we're in a battle. So just, when you see momentum forward, like you want to encourage it and you don't want to go back into now you're bringing something in other than what you were doing. And you're kind of doing that shaming, blaming thing, and making your point for sure. But to what end, what is that going to do? And the other thing about being in control is to recognize that you are in control of your buttons. Yes, they may be pushing your buttons. I have no doubt about it, because kids that are fighting for control are incredibly annoying, especially for any parents that are also wanting to be, have some control issues. Like, that can be the hardest thing, so that's why I want you to be really solid on what being in control is, because it will help you, even if you're a type A person that wants things done right now. And it's like, you can do that by being in control. You cannot do it by being controlling. The chaos will leak out everywhere when you're being controlling, sooner or later. So you're in charge of your own buttons and you're in charge of the triggers and how you're going to react to them. So yes, that might be a trigger for you. You hate it when they roll their eyes or they swear at you or whatever, but you are still in charge of you. You can't, they are not in charge of you, and you're not in charge of their reactions. You can help and teach and show a different way. They are children, so they do need that guidance, but you also have to help yourself and show that and model that. So, and remember that if it's hard for you, it's hard for your kids too. If it's hard for you to quit using a word or swearing, if it's hard for you to not give, huff and puff and stomp around, mutter under your breath, then it's hard for them too. Any of these changes are difficult. So that's why it takes connection and family to make those kinds of changes. Remember too, that you can let go of things that you cannot control. You can't control the weather. You can't control politicians. You can't control so many things in this world. And yet we have to control ourselves, and we got to teach our kids that too. I think we have too many people that are just kind of swayed by whatever's happening and whatever, somebody said something to them or did something or cut them off or whatever, and nobody's just being responsible for their own self. Yeah, that sucked that happened, but we've got to find a different way and we've got to move on. So just some things to remember. Control is a trauma reaction, and it's a sign that you might be more shame-based than you thought. You have to evaluate yourself and just realize, like, yeah, and when the kids are ignoring me, when they've done this job halfway, when they are pushing the limits, when they have their own anger, like their anger could be a huge trigger for you. And then you're reacting in the same way, right? You're frustrated. And so now they're seeing that frustration. You got to show them how to deal with frustration. You have to model for them and teach them and walk alongside them through all these emotions. So if you're really struggling to do that, then just know that's your struggle, right? And you got to learn it. And we all need to. And we're all, like I said, this is about getting better. Like you're gonna grow and mature, because this kind of emotional thing is really emotional immaturity, when we have to control everything. We see it in our kids, but we can see it in ourselves, and we're changing and getting better. There's some connecting language, some different wording to use. You can practice those phrases. They're in your workbook if you've taken the parent class. There's all kinds of help out there for that, but you may need your own counseling to deal with this stuff, and that's totally fine. Because you gotta deal with your stuff so that you can be that solid object for your kids. And I always tell people, if you have a challenging child, like, you should have a counselor, because yourself, right? Like, the kids always have counselors, it seems like, but I hope that the parents do too, because you got to know how to take care of yourself, and you got to know how to work through your own emotions. And it's just going to take practice. You're going to get better and better and better. And it's amazing, and it's you're going to look back and you'll be like, man, I wish I would have known that when my oldest was this age, right? But it is a work in progress. And I think it's part of our human work here, is how we overcome these obstacles. And sometimes the obstacles are ourselves, how we get better. So remember that you are their guide and you are their teacher, and that it's hard. And that even though kids can learn all this stuff in counseling about how they're going to control their anger or deal with their frustration, I always ask kids when I used to see kids in my office, I would tell them, what are you going to do when you're angry? And they would give me their answers that they had learned, like they were going to breathe, or they were going to take a walk, or they were going to walk away, or whatever, or they were just not going to get angry anymore ever, but then I would ask them, like, well, in your family, what do other people do when they're angry? What do people do in your family when they're angry or frustrated? How do you, if you look at the mountain of escalation, how do you get calm? What do you do? What do you do when you're fed up with your kids? Can you ask for a break? Can you take a time out? Can you model that for your kids? Like, sometimes I have to take a time out. Like, you guys are fine. Kids are perfect at being perfectly kids, right? Like, they're perfect at being themselves. They have very little skills. We have these skills, we have these life experiences, and yet we still struggle, right, with these feelings. And so we have to help them to learn that. So they're doing it the best they can. And, and they're, some of your kids are really strong. They're going to push back. You start being too controlling on them, then they're going to, it's like you're trying to clamp down on them, and it's going to ooze out in their behaviors. They are going to either get more aggressive, or they're going to say something that they know is going to push a button, or they're going to do the thing that you don't want them to do. It's like when they're really little and they start doing all the things they're not supposed to do because they just need a nap, right? So we have to tell them. They're not going to tell you, I'm tired, I need a nap. Instead, they're going to start doing all these things. And so then you can say, oh, they need a nap, because they cannot listen anymore. They're not able to follow directions. And our kids are the same way. They need a break, or they need us to come around it a different way. And we're their guide and teacher. And so, they might not appreciate your help for a long time. And that part is really, really hard. But that is the way that it is. But you cannot demand that they learn just because you want them to. You work on it, and you're working on it as a family. And if it takes the whole 18 20 years that they're in your home to learn it, it's okay, because that's what it's going to take. But they need this skill set. And so they might not be open and receptive to it, but we're learning together. So you have to keep modeling it, and you have to keep doing it. For how long? Until it, forever, right? Because I still want to be able to talk to my family the right way. I want to get better and better at communicating with my spouse. I want to get better and better at communicating with my kids and my grandkids. And so, it doesn't change. The pressure of what it feels like right now, it will change, because the kids do grow up and they do get older, but it's not going to get better on its own. You're going to have to be intentional about making these changes from being in control. Some things that you can do to gain control without being controlled is recognize the power that you have as the adult and the parent. So it's like your kids may be really pushing to, why can't we do this? And why, I want to do it. And I didn't want to do that. And I wanted to do this, and all of the stuff, right? Where they're pushing. But just, you're in charge. It's okay. The chances of them, really owning their own phone, owning their own car, having their own house, buying their own food, all of this stuff right now that while they're living under your roof is very, very small. So you have all of that. I'm not saying that you withhold it in order to get control of your kids, but you have all the power. Like, I want to go do this too, but in order for us to do this, we got to get this done first. And it's on your schedule, and you're the one setting it up. Where you get controlling is when you then add 3 or 4 more things. Well, now I don't like the way you're acting about it, so we're not going to go. Or now I don't like this, or you didn't do this well enough, or whatever it is, right? And so we start adding more into it. That's where the boundaries get broken down, and that's where we lose motivation in our kids to be compliant. So create that schedule and that routine, and you're in charge of that. But again, it's not that micromanaging. It's to use that so that you have that. It's kind of that ability to guide and direct the day. So the good things that they want to have happen, whether it's a treat or getting to go somewhere, like that all comes from you. Really everything is coming from you. You wouldn't have the house that you have. You wouldn't have, I have to talk to parents about, they don't have to drive if they're not ready to drive. If you can't trust them to do the right thing, they don't need to have the phone, or they don't have to have, have to go over to someone's house to play if they're not acting appropriately. Like you have a lot of resources there, because they are dependent on you. And so you don't have to demand. You want to think about creating a path, and you can put bumpers along the way, that obstacles that keep them on the path, but it's up to you to help create that path and to get them on that path. Also, to just remember that you cannot demand that. I don't want you to demand something that you can't follow up on. So you have to plan before you demand, right? So if you're going to direct the day and you're going to tell the kids, like I was working with a family, and we were talking about, it's like you can tell your child, like, you need to come sit by me, but you also need to know that if they refuse, you're going to have a plan of, okay, well, I will come help you, come sit down. And so you might have to do that and physically help them, but you have to be, you have to be careful, or you can wait, and you can be waiting until they can come sit by you, so you're not going to always force. I don't want you to force. I want you to learn to use that power that you have by waiting, and by using the power of the language that we use with that. It's like, we can't start until you come sit down. And then once they sit down, it's like, then if you're demanding, like, okay, I want you to look at me, or I want you to, sit up straight, or I want you to, do all these other things. Like, if you don't have a plan on how that's going to happen, then you're just making demands that you have no follow-up, no plan for. So I'm not going to physically force a kid to put their head up or to look at me, but I might wait to start until they're looking at me. I might wait to say something until they're looking at me. Sometimes it doesn't matter. The first thing I asked for was for them to sit there. I didn't say that they had to sit up straight, or they had to, sit a certain way. If I wanted it to be a certain way, I should have said that at the beginning. I need you to sit by me, and I expect you to be, have your hands folded or whatever, and then we can wait. But I don't want you to physically force them to do these things. And so be careful what you demand. It's the same thing with change your tone or whatever. It's like, you can't force that. So that's not what we can address right now. Right now, we're working on a bigger picture of just being compliant or even though they didn't want to be there, they showed up and they were there, so, oh, good. Thanks for coming. Let's go. Like, we're not going to now camp here and talk about and, harass you basically about the way that you did it. So that's how you can stay in control without being controlling. You remember that you're the influencer. You're not the one that can make them change, but you can influence those positive changes. You provide security and you guide them through their anxiety responses and support them as you guys learn together. So you're supporting them as you learn together. And then remember that autonomy and regulation are essential. So helping them, that's why we can't force somebody to calm down, right? We can't force them to do a Calm Plus 5. We can't force them to get regulated. You better calm down right now. Good luck, right? You better calm down right now. And then they can co-regulate with you. And they do that by keeping their autonomy. And so the only time that we have to use control over a person is when they are out of control. But we have to be really aware if we were the ones that pushed them and pushed them and pushed them until they lost control. So if we can come around it in a different way by using, the power of waiting or just being consistent of you're going to have to say, yes, Mom, or we're not going, or, something like that. It's then we can do that, but we're not going to force them to do that. We're not going to use that kind of external control with our physically, just because we don't like the way they're acting. We have to give them their autonomy to come around. And that's the other thing too. If you think about how we are as people, if somebody is demanding that we change our attitude or that we straighten up or whatever, it's there's something inside of us no, I'm not, and we've just made them dig their heels in more. Where when we let go of that tug of war of of that, then we're able to come around it a different way. And so it may be that, they didn't have a good attitude about going on that walk, but as you're going on the walk, you're able to walk side by side with them, and it's okay. You keep the relationship important and established, right? Because we're all growing and learning together. And then last thing is you're going to change your interactions. So use connection for change and build the relationships in your home. And that's how we, work through that and gain that confidence. So then you can say, who's in charge? Parents are in charge, all the time, not just some of the time. So, that is a big piece of what we work on in the family program, because I want you to have the confidence to do that. So, it's a lot of information, but also there's a book I read a long time ago, and I don't know if it's still in print, but you might want to look at how to talk so your kids will listen, or how to talk so kids can learn. Some of those books have some really good connecting language in it. It might be really, really helpful for you. And then in your workbook, if you've taken the class, there's connecting words. And also I have a book coming out in the end of July, and it will have more connecting words and connecting language, instead of this, say this, kind of stuff that could be really, really helpful. And it is for me too. I have to practice, and there's a lot of times when I have to go back over a conversation and think, okay, I could have said this differently, or I could have done that differently. And if you're really stuck in that controlling mindset, it's going to be really hard for you to learn and grow yourself of how you could do it differently. You might beat yourself up that you did it wrong, but you're not going to learn it's not just about beating yourself up. It's oh, okay, next time I'm going to really try to do it this way. And you'll be amazed when you start seeing the changes in yourself first. So best wishes to you, and leave any comments and feel free to contact us if you have more questions. Thanks for listening to The Parenting Bridge. Do you want to learn more about building a bridge to better behaviors? Pick up a copy of Dr. Michelle Alden's new book, Parenting Emotionally Distressed Kids. Or, for more resources, you can click on the link for Healthy Foundations. If you would like to leave a comment or a question for Dr. Alden, there's a link in the notes. We'll see you next time, and remember, things can always get better.